أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يقربنا منك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا سهلا اللهم أعذنا من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا وسحنا شأننا كله لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا آمين 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 أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, bifadlillah, Allah's brought us together, in these final days of Ramadan, and inshallah, as this metaphor has been used previously, and that's one of where the believer is like the stallion, right? The Arab stallion in particular, and where there's a finish line, the believer increases in their devoutness or in their efforts. They don't slow down. They put their foot on the gas. Okay? And we should have already registered that when we entered the last 10 days. I'm sure persons before myself in their reminders would have hopefully made the significance of the last 10 days as being that really every night you should try and spend in devotion, until Fajr and even after Fajr. Push yourselves, okay? It's 10 days of feeling tired maybe, or a bit of fatigue, but the rewards are unimaginable, right? That's from the statement of Allah Himself, and hopefully will coincide with that night, which is khayrun min alfi shahr. Yes. Now, amongst the aspects of Ramadan that we should have hopefully been engaged with is reading the Quran, or at least more than normal, right? And if there wasn't no normal, then at least something, right? And the Book of Allah is in many ways it's either for you or against you. And this is something that was said by the Prophet ﷺ, and it's understood from the traditions that many can read the book and it can actually be a source of driving you further from Allah, God forbid. And many can read the book, as in the Quran, and it can bring them obviously very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I just want to touch upon a few things. Really, it's a greater question, because what it is that when you look at our history and you look at the people that have graced the Muslim history as by way of their attachment to the Quran, by way of their realization of the Quran, it really is it's outstanding, really, absolutely outstanding, the type of efforts that were illustrated by the tabi'een and the tabi'een and those who followed their like, and until present day, even till recently, teachers in Damascus we know of, our teachers, masters of the recitations, of the 10 recitations. You have phenomenal stories about them, even till now. There's a contemporary known as Shaykh Anas al-Hibri, and he he's got the ijazat from Shaykh Muhammad Sukar, the teacher of Shaykh Muhammad Samir, father-in-law as well. But if you met him, you wouldn't think it. He's a man that's very relaxed, almost jovial, very jovial in fact, always cracking jokes, and you'll just be a bit like, okay. And he took one of his students to his house once, and he showed him in the back of his house, he actually has dug his own grave. And this is nothing recent. Bishr al-Hafi, Ali ibn al-Madini, the great hadith master, Shaykh al-Bukhari, he was a Shaykh al-Bukhari. He spoke about Bishr al-Hafi. He said Bishr al-Hafi dug his own grave, and kani yakhtum fihi al-Quran. He said this is the thing, he dug his own grave and he would finish the Quran sitting in his grave. He'd make a khatam of Quran in his grave, right? And you look at people like Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash. This is one of the great tabi'een, radiyallahu anhu, rahimahullah, right? He used to tell his son in his room, this is the thing, having designated spaces. In our homes, hopefully we have designated spaces where we bring to life worship, we bring to life ibadah, set areas. And we know that from the prophetic sunnah as well. The Sahaba used to seek this from the Prophet. He used to take him to his house and used to ask him, it's in Bukhari, used to ask him to take a mihrab That is, take a space in our home and make it the mihrab of our house. And we should all have that. And Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash, he said that he told his son once, he came into his room of ibadah, he said, listen, he goes, in this room, be very cautious, you do not transgress against Allah. For I have finished no less than 18,000 khatams of Quran. Yeah? And he said that at the end of his life, he told his daughter, he said to his daughter, he said, what have you got to be worried about? I have finished no less than 24,000 khatams of Quran in this room. Right? So this is not a small thing. And the other thing we should understand is that the Quran is so transformative on all different levels. And this is what I'm trying to say, is that we can talk about these stories and they also become hydrographical, which I mean is like they almost seem like these are fairy tales. They're not fairy tales. But how do they then become something that is we can relate to in a real sense? Like, one of the great reciters of the Quran, in fact, one of the recitations goes through from Medina, Abu Ja'far. Yeah? He's Abu Ja'far Yazid ibn Qa'qa'. He narrates through Nafi. Nafi even goes through. He's from the Medinan reciters. Yeah, he's Sahib al-Qira'ah, one of the great imams of the Qira'ah, one of the great imams of the recitation. He said that his son-in-law was present when he was passing away, Shaykh, and he said to those who and the people who attended Abu Ja'far's final moments, they themselves were great reciters of the Quran, like Abu Hazim. These are great Qurra of the Quran. They were there when he was passing away. And he said to them, Shayba said, he said, shall I show you something that will take you away? And they said, what's that? And they lifted his shirt. They said he lifted his shirt and they couldn't believe. Yani qashafa an sadrihi. They showed his chest. And they said that what they saw, فَإِذَا دَوْرَاتٌ بَيْضَاء. They saw literally a spinning light on his chest. Yeah, this is in the work of Imam Dahabi that he's done in Qurra, right? He literally had physically. I'm telling you, there's a spinning light. Nafi', he said, Subhanallah. He goes, well, Ghussila Abu Ja'far. He goes, Nafi', that's the great Imam Nafi'. He said that when he was then washed, yeah, he said anyone that was present noticed that from his nahar, yani from his upper neck down to his chest, this area, it said it was like a clean white page, like illuminating. Basically, it was light. And then he says, فَمَا شَكَّ أَحَدْ حَضَرَهُ أَنَّهُ نُورُ الْقُرْآنِ. He said, not anyone there doubted that this was from the light of the Book of Allah. Right? These are from our, so we have these great, and this is something that the Quran does. This is the point. The Quran transforms, right? So we will need to talk about, well, what kind of things, what things are going to aid us to that, like get to that. So there's 10 areas, we could say 10 points, okay, that can hopefully assist us towards getting what is a present full recitation, or at least having presence in our recitation of the Quran, or having an engagement with the Quran. And the first thing that we must understand is that fahmul asl al-kalam, yani we must have this awareness and bring to mind that this speech that we engage with, the book, essentially what we're talking about here. This is an attribute from the attribute of Allah, right? Allah is Kalim. You understand? This is one of the first things. The first things is to understand who is speaking here. Allah is speaking. And He's speaking with that divine attribute, the one of speech. Right? And as perfect as Allah is in all of His attributes, and as infinite as His attributes are, yeah, they are without beginning and they are without end. Okay? And this is what makes the access to the Quran something so phenomenal, because it brings you in proximity to the actual attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's speech. Right? So this is the first thing, right? The first thing is to have this awareness that at the end of the day, this is Allah talking to us. Okay? Allah talking to us, and knowing that that's His attribute of speech. وَقَلَّمَ اللَّهُ مُوسَى تَكْلِيمًا. Allah spoke to Moses. Sure, He spoke to him. Okay? The second thing is likewise knowing that that's the one who's addressing you. You then have a massive reverence for the one who's speaking to you. As in, you approach it with an attitude of reverence. So these are 10 things that I'm trying to go through, which are about attitude. They're about positioning, they're about orientation, they're about state of mind, they're about approach, they're about pre-presence, if you want to say it. You're trying to bring this to the fore before you engage the book or while you're reading the book, okay? Right. So the next thing is what? Ta'zeem al-mutakallim. You know, your reverence, your honoring, your esteeming of the one that is speaking to you. Now you can't, just think of that. That's what he's just saying. You need to approach it with this, this awe, submissiveness, this humility, because you know that at the end of the day, it's Allah talking to you here. So you need to remind yourself of that. Ta'zeem al-mutakallim. Then he said the third area is making your heart present as much as you can, as in making yourself present in the moment, yes, and leaving aside conversations within yourself, like the chatter, the internal chatter, trying to remove that from yourself, right? And the previous two should help you do that, because they should aid you to then be able to be in the moment, because you're under the, you're under the awe and you're taken. You should be actually somewhat taken back by knowing that you are now, Allah's talking to you. And who is Allah? Allah, God, one without beginning, one without end, the one that is flawless, perfect in every single way, right? This is why Fudayl ibn Iyad, he would say that, kafa billahi muhibban, Allah is sufficient as a beloved, as one you love. Allah is sufficient. And then he says, وَبِالْقُرْآنِ مُؤَانِسًا, and the book of Allah as a source of finding intimacy, right? وَبِالْمَوْتِ وَاعِظًا, and death is enough of a sermon. And اتَّخِذِ اللَّهَ صَاحِبًا, and he says, وَاتَّخِذِ اللَّهَ صَاحِبًا, take Allah as your comrade, as your friend, right? وَدَعِ النَّاسِ جَانِبًا, and leave people to the side. And this is not literally to be taken, right? He's talking about attitudes here that one should have in themselves. Right? I think this is where we can sometimes conflict things, in that when we say something like that, a literal mind can unfortunately mistake that means then squandering other people's duties and rights and paying no attention to those. This is the mistake that many can end up making. This is not what's being said here. It's talking from a point of attitude of heart. That you try and make your heart reserved only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, the third. And the fourth thing is tadabbur. He says then reflection. Yes, recitation with reflection. Now reflection can mean taking an ayah and holding on to it. Yeah, taking an ayah and holding on to it and repeating it repetitively. The Prophet ﷺ did that. He did that. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud reported this, and others, that he did that with إِن تُعَذِّبْهُمْ فَإِنَّهُمْ عِبَادُكَ وَإِن تَغْفِرْ لَهُمْ فَإِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. Right. This is the ayah the Prophet read throughout the night. He kept on repeating it, and he's making reflection upon that, right? And similarly, we are from Muhammad ibn Munkadir. Muhammad ibn Munkadir is one of the great tabi'een as well. He was asked by Abu Hazim. He said to him, "What makes you cry?" Because I saw you was crying all night. He goes, "What was making you cry all night?" And he said, "Qala al-ayah." He said that it was the ayah that says, وَبَدَالَهُمْ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَمْ يَكُونُوا يَحْتَسِبُونَ. He said, and what has been made manifest to them was that which they didn't take account for. You understand? That was made manifest to them. And he goes, that was the ayah that held him all night. He just read and read, repeated it until he found himself, coming to realizations of it. And then, so this is the fourth, right? The fifth is tafahum. And tafahum is not the same as faham. Tafahum is to actually aspire to then try and understand the book of Allah. Now that's something else. That's like, where you're not just reading it, you're not just reciting the book, you're trying to access the book by way of its ma'na, right? Which means then looking at the Arabic and trying to ponder over its words. And even through the English, if you can facilitate that, you can even facilitate that somewhat through the English. But ideally it is really trying to understand the text, understand the Quran, understand what is actually positing, right? Tafahum. This is something that would be, and that's more of an acquisition, obviously, something long term. You have to build that up. The sixth is takhalli anil mawani' al fahm, and this is quite interesting. The sixth thing he says here is doing away with those things that can actually end up being a barrier towards understanding. And that goes towards an over emphasis, or you could say concentration paid to pronunciation. Now this is where the tajweed can become a killer, right? You know, people can get obsessed with this, okay? Now, don't get me wrong, if you're starting out and one is starting out to read, you have to work on your tajweed. It's just the way it is. You just have to, right? But what it shouldn't do, it shouldn't then become a mawani'. Because what happens is people then just become obsessed with just makharij al-huruf, right? Mudud. Make sure they're making the mudud. Make sure they do the mad muttasil, the ja'iz, the lazims, etc., etc. Sila kubra, sila sughra. You know, is that qalqala sughra, qalqala kubra? You know, how do you know, did you make that harf muraqqaq when oh no, it's going to be mufakham? You know, you start becoming all obsessed with this to the point where you forget what you're doing. You're just caught up in this, you know, rules of how to do it. And like I said, one has to somewhat go through that initially. You have to, because you need to get it to a point where it's kind of instinctive, yeah. But then you've got to let go of it. I mean, you can't just like, you know, otherwise that's going to be and the other thing, that's the first thing, is so that can't become an obsession. Don't let that become an obsession. He's not saying that shouldn't be important, it should be important, but don't let it become an obsession. Otherwise that's going to prevent you from getting to a presence and an understanding of engaging the Quran on a level of understanding. Second thing is taqleed. And what is meant by that is just blindly, like, you know, the danger we have is that you can hear an exposition or a commentary to the Quran or a verse of the Quran, and this can happen to us a lot. And you'll automatically, if you've paid attention to that, like, you know, you listen to a lecture on a certain surah, and someone says, oh, there's a lecture on that surah, you can turn around and say, oh, well, I've heard the lecture, I've heard that. I've heard about that. Do you understand? Right? I've heard about this surah, I've heard the explanation given to it. This is perilous. You should never do that. I mean, this is one of the things where you're cutting yourself off. You understand? Where you're closing doors on yourself. And this is a very important point, is that one does not close the door on oneself when it comes to possible openings of understanding, because of understandings already they may have possibly got about something, because they think it's just the same thing. Lethal. Very dangerous. This will also stop you from possibly getting engaged, you know, getting closer, and also having a realization of sitting with the Book of Allah. And the third thing on this idea of preventatives is persistency upon wrong actions. This is the third thing. This is the nature of good obedience, nature of obedience and wrong action. The two cannot stay. You know, one has to give. One has to give, right? And you know, but with the Book of Allah, if one wants to really benefit from it, they have to be almost. You have to do away with the wrong. You know, and this is talking about the ma'asiyah, obviously. You know, the things that Allah clearly has prohibited and His Messenger, and embarking on those things that He clearly instructed to do. All right, and these are the basics that we're advised. Okay, so that was the sixth, and that broke out into three areas. Right, that had three preventative areas, and then you have the seventh, which is an attitude aspect. Is that one should have this attitude of takhsis. And what does that mean? Takhsis is that one should actually really believe that the kalam that they're engaging with, as in the Book of Allah, is specifically for them. Don't worry about anybody else on the planet. It's specifically for you. Allah speaking to you. You understand? It's very important, right? The idea that Allah's talking to me. I don't care. You know, this is me and Allah, right? This is my conversation with Allah, and Allah's having this. You know, this is what it means by this takhsis, right? The other thing is that this is the eighth thing, right? So that was the idea of respect. The eighth is ta'athur. A ta'athur means being open to the understanding of hope and fear, you know, with Allah. So you understand, you're opening yourself to the Book of Allah, and you're opening up to the meanings to the Book of Allah, and you're hoping for how they reside with you in result of fear and hope with Allah. You understand? So it's almost like you're ready to kind of like feel, and from the understanding you get, yeah, the understandings of fear and hope in your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that is actually an effect of the reading. How does it result with you in your fear and hope with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because obviously you'll read ayahs that can be very, very powerful, very moving in a sense of they make you very cautious, right? And there's other ayahs you can read, that will, make your hope go through the heavens, لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله, don't despair from the mercy of Allah, right? And so this was 8th, right? And the 9th is Taraqqi. Taraqqi means approaching the book of Allah with an understanding that it will spiritually not just develop you, it will take you higher, it will bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the idea of Taraqqi, right? And that is why it's to give particular note to the point of كَأَنَّهُ يَسْمَعُ كَلَامَ رَبِّهِ. It's like, this is one of the point of holding yourself with this understanding as if you are hearing literally Allah talking to you, right? Ka'b bin Malik, Ka'b bin Malik radiallahu anhu, he would say, alaykum bil Quran, upon you is the Quran, upon you, yani, attach yourself to the Quran. فَإِنَّهُ فَحْمُ الْأَقْلِ. For indeed it is understanding that is intelligible. The Quran is understanding that is intelligible. وَنُورُ الْحِكْمَةِ. And its light is a wisdom. وَأَحْدَثَ الْكُتُبِ بِالرَّحْمَنِ. And it is the most recent of revelations from the All-Merciful. And then he said, لَقَدْ كَانَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم يَلْتَقِي الْمَطَرِ بِثَوْبِهِ. He said, and the Prophet ﷺ, he would meet the fresh rain with his garment out. When it would rain, when it would rain in Medina, the Prophet would go out and he would have his rida or whatever, and he'd go out and he'd open his rida to catch the rain. Yeah, stand under the rain as it come down. And he was asked about that. وَلَمَّا يُسَأَلَ عَنْهُ وَمَا ذَاكَ يَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. Why you do that? And he said, إِنَّهُ حَدِيثُ أَهْدٍ مِنْ رَبِّهِ. He said that it has just left the lordly presence. You understand? Very interesting. He said it has just left the lordly presence. Look at Ka'b saying. He's saying, think about this. And then he says, فَمَا ظَنَّكُمْ بِالْقُرْآنِ فَلَيْسَ كُلُّ تَلَاوَ وَاحِدًا. He says, so what is your understanding now about the Quran? Do you understand what he's saying? That's an amazing ayah. You see what he's done? He said, think about this. Because if that was in regards to the rain, the Prophet was witnessing that as just come recently from the lordly presence. He says, so what about this book? This tanzeel, this thing that has, its descent. How are we going to be approaching this? You see? Like, you talk about, and the thing about how rain gives life, etc. What's the Quran? It's been, like we say, it's a transformative aspect of the book of Allah, right? 9 and 10. 10th is having this, once Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has engaged you in conversation, has engaged you with His book, the 10th thing is at-tabarru'. And what does tabarru' mean? It means, tabarru' means freeing yourself from any aggrandizing of power, of strength, of ability, any association of that, you understand? So it's making what effectively gratitude that Allah took that from you. You understand? And this is actually, you would say, as a result of ending your recitation, right? I'm giving an idea because of time. I had to kind of like go through it quite quickly, right? But each of these points, I think, are very poignant. And the other thing I think is worth mentioning is, when we talk about this whole the love of Quran and the love of people with the Book of Allah, there's a clear hadith, right, which it's been narrated in different ways, but through different chains, and it's authenticated. Is that إن القرآن يلقى صاحبه يوم القيامة حين ينشق عنه القبر. The Quran will meet its person on the day of judgment, when their grave is opened up. كالرجل الشاهب, as a pale and a withered man, right? as a pale and withered man. وَيَقُولُ لَهُ هَلْ تَعْرِفُونِي. And it will say to this person, do you know me? And the man's going to reply, مَا أَعْرِفُكَ, I don't know you. And he will say, فَيَقُولُ أَنَا صَاحِبُكَ الَّذِي أَذْمَعْتُكَ فِي الْهَوَاجِرِ. I'm the one that caused your thirst, during the hot days. Yeah. وَأَسْحَرْتَ لَيْلَكَ, and kept you up at night. فَإِنَّ كُلَّ تَاجِرٍ وَرَاءَ تِجَارَتِهِ. He said, every merchant today is behind his trade. وَإِنَّكَ الْيَوْمِ وَرَاءَ كُلِّ تِجَارَةٍ. He said, and that's for today. Now your product, your merchandise stands behind you. Meaning there's no chasing now. You've done, basically, you set yourself up well, right? قَالَ فَيُعْتِي الْمُلْكَ بِيَمِينِهِ. And this man will be given the dominion in his right hand, وَالْخُلْدُ بِالشِّمَالِ, eternity in his left, وَيُودُ عَلَى رَأْسِهِ تَاجَ الْبَقَارَ, and a crown of dignity will be placed upon his head, وَيُكْسِي وَالِدَاهُ حُلَّتَيْنِ, and his parents will be given the two of the most finest garments. His parents. This is one that is a memorizer of Quran, to be honest. Talking about a hafiz, right? One who has held the Quran. This is known as Sahib al-Quran, right? His parents will be given a hullatayn, la tuqumu lahuma ad-dunya. The equivalent of the world cannot even be compared to. Anything of the world cannot compare to these two garments that he's given. فَيَقُولَانِ, and the parents will say, بِمَا كُسِينَا هَذَا, and for what reasons have we been given such a garment? فَيُقَالُ لَهُمَا, and it will be said to them, بِأَخْذِ وَلِدِكُمَا الْقُرْآنِ, because of your child taking the book of Allah. Because of your child taking the book of Allah. ثُمَّ يُقَالُ لَهُ, then it will be said to the man, اقرأ وَاسْعَدْ فِي دَرَجِ الْجَنَّةِ, recite and ascend the stairs and the levels of paradise and its various rooms. وَغُرُفِهَا فَهُوَ فِي سُعُودٍ مَا دَامَ يَقْرَأُ حَدْرًا وَتَرْتِيلًا. And this person, or this hafiz of Quran, will carry on ascending and ascending as long as they keep on reciting and keep on, traveling to that point where it says that they, in their fluency of reading, as well as methodical reading, they keep on going higher and higher in paradise. And there's weaker hadith that talk about that every kind of platform of Jannah is a numeration of all the ayahs of the Quran, as in every ayah marks a step in Jannah. Every ayah marks a step in Jannah. Right? There's weaker hadith that speak to that effect. And just to let us encourage each other, is that when I was just reading through these things, and we spoke a bit about biographies, came across a family where they were, you had a family known as Al-Hasan ibn Salih ibn Hayy al-Thawri. And so you had Al-Hasan and Ali, the sons of Salih, right? They're two brothers. And their mother, جزأوا الليل ثلاثة أجزاء يختمون فيه القرآن فكان يختمان كل ليلة. They basically, what they did as mother and two boys, they divided the Quran into a third amongst themselves. So each was given 10 juz every night. So in the mornings, they would always have a khatam in their house of Quran. Alright? And then it would happen to be their mother passes away, and then the brothers divided the remainder. Right? Ali and Al-Hasan. And it was a case where they would then do 15 each every night. They'd have a khatam. Right? And then Ali passes away and Hassan's left on his own. But now you see he's had years and years. So it's not like every night he'd do a khatam of Quran. Now, we should be wary here. Some people would say, well, there's a nahi of finishing the Quran in under 3 days and, things like this. And that's true. We know those hadiths, and we know that scholars made exceptions in certain times as well, like Ramadan, because of the bountiness of the month, that it should not hold you back. That's why Abu Hanifa, they'd finish one at night, one in the morning, right? So some interpret that 3 prohibition is relative as well. It's not necessarily if someone has a istidad and the capacity to. You know, it's their affair. They can quite well do that. So we need to, you know, this is just from a point of what I'm just trying to say is wrapping this up, so we can maybe take a couple of questions or discussion, is that, you know, we need to think about going ahead, you know, how we stay connected with the Book of Allah and what encouragement we should take from this month, because hopefully it has brought the Quran back into focus in our lives, and how we can continue with that, inshallah, moving ahead out of Ramadan. So inshallah ta'ala. So those 10 sort of points that I gave, or were mentioned, I should say, they were said out of approaches of how we can stay hopefully connected to the Quran, as well as endear to have a greater presence with the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah ta'ala. So I'm happy to open it up to any queries or discussions.
I know we discussed OTK already. Somebody asked a question yesterday about regular tafsir, and I know you do that as part of the OTK classes. Is there anything, are you offering anything, or do you know anything, anything that's being offered within Oxford across outside of term time? Term time is Oxford relatively short than this. So
yeah.
The other half of the year.
I don't know. I mean, obviously we've got, mashallah, Allah preserve him. We have Shaykh Akram. I don't know exactly what his program. I know he does this thing in London. You know, he does a salam in London, doesn't he? And so he's got Quran on there. Does he do? Does he do
on Friday nights, but
not tafsir.
No.
Nothing to. Oh, shame. I'm not aware. You know. I mean, yeah, we have, as you know, as you said, we're in break now. Well, OTKF's in break. So as far as I know, from that point, obviously the Quran's not fortunate. But outside of that, I'm not sure. I don't know if anybody else knows. I'm not sure anywhere else where you know, tafsir is happening, because tafsir is actually really important. You know, I feel that the Quran, to access the Quran, you cannot access it until you first have a basic frame of approach to the book. I really believe that. I think it's actually quite, to be honest, in our age, in our current age, and how certain narratives are already imposing themselves on Muslim minds before they've even got to the Quran. Yeah, it makes it even of a greater concern that you know, people are given somewhat of a. It's not like hardcore scholarship. Let's get it clear. The Book of Allah is for every single person, and I think we have to make that very clear. There's a differentiation between, you know, hard sciences scholarship, where you're like really going to the Arabic and studying rhetoric and etc., and making it just accessible, and it is accessible. You know, I mean, we had Tahqib, who's at Oxford. He comes, he does a Quran club. He's been doing that. That's, you know, that is a pure example, in fact, a fantastic illustration of making the Quran accessible, where you can sit and you're reading it in English, right? But you're with someone that, alhamdulillah, they've got a good footing. You know, they know tafsir. They know. I mean, they've been engaged with the Quran for over 10 years now. So, you know, they know how to navigate the Book of Allah in that sense. So, you know, you need to be in a setting where someone is of, you know, who can kind of, you know, say, okay, yeah, that's interesting, or that you know, you can't just let it fly off the handle, basically. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think we need to definitely think about that. Make the Quran more accessible, and the need for it. Like we said there, one of the things that holds people back is taqleed. You know, the idea that, you know, you overly orchestrate the situation, or, you know, you make something so holy, right, that it just stays on the shelf, right? Okay, it's just, you can't touch that unless you're like, you have to be so pure to touch it. That's nonsense. You know, that's the dangerous. It actually feeds right into what shaitan wants you to do. So then you don't end up touching it at all. You know, you don't engage it. Yeah, and there's always the excuse that you must don't touch it except those who are pure. So like, oh, you know, I haven't got this, I haven't done that. And no, we need to break that down. We need to make the Quran something that is, inshallah, a lot more accessible. It's not overly complicated. Yeah, but yet it's giving the haqq of what the Quran is. I mean, it's kalamullah, right? It can't be reduced into just, you know, like you know, Beatrix Potter or something like that. You know, it's kalamullah at the end of the day, right? Okay, yeah. So anything Young was wondering maybe?
No, the question I have was beyond the 10 points you raised just now. Was there anything, either in that text or other text, in respect of how you prepare yourself for the Quran, by way of your actual intrinsic well-being, by way of the food you eat, what's sustaining you, how you prepare yourself? I mean, these are all things which, mashallah, are very, very helpful. But I think that's another aspect which. I
mean, lifestyle outside of this, I've always said that, you know, I mean, I think that this is another very important area that Muslims need to awaken themselves to, is that our lifestyles, you know, I hate the word religion, to be honest. I find it very cumbersome and it's very much pigeonholed, the word term religion, right? Equally, you know, when we're talking Islam, we try to counter that and we always say it's a way of life, etc. But let me be honest, let me ask this question, where is it? I mean, seriously, how many people, I don't mean many Muslims, I'm talking amongst educated Muslims, I'm talking about Muslims that are engaged, right, in the religion in a very full-on way, right? Where's our lifestyle choices that really mirror what we should be living as? And that's not saying you become some, you know, from the Amish or something like that, okay? Right? It's not what we're talking about. I mean, you know, Brother Niyamal just touched on it there, you know, our food, our diet, our exercise, you know, those type of things that we do are very, very important. How we choose to eat things, not to eat things, these are very, very important aspects to what are in spirit, what is the Sunnah. Right? Yeah, they weren't discussed at the time of the prophetic time. Why? Because they didn't have to worry about that. They weren't living in the age of commercial products and, you know, packaged all these other sort of things like drinks and God knows what, and refined sugar. Everything was still very natural. It was just, their lifestyle just was that, you see. And by moving away from that, we have to recognize that we are in a very, you know, we do ourselves massive injustices when it comes to then not being able to be spiritually high. You can't, I honestly think, you can't, I find it very hard. Someone cannot be, I shouldn't say that stuff, I can't, no, it's up to Allah, Allah gives you a good, but on a point of asbab, just causing, you know, just point of taking means, yeah. It's very hard to be spiritually connected if you're physically in a very bad shape, or you're bad, you know, like you're just unwell. I mean, in the sense of, and unwell, most people are unwell, believe it or not, because they're going to get coronary heart disease, right? What's the percentages for that roughly? For people to get diagnosed with sort of, your doctors, that's what I'm going to ask you these sort of questions, statistics. But it's pretty high, right? I mean, the likelihood of people to get, you know, these kind of, now what are just chronic diseases, chronic illness, it's just expected. Oh, you know, you just, what can you do? You know, it just happens now, you know. Yeah, just take some, what's the blood thinning stuff, not aspirins. What's the other things they're given?
Moving on from that,
yeah.
Rat poison.
Rat poison, yeah. You know, just, you know, oh, you know, take, these are more, this for me is, and other things as well, doing things that are not essentially like literally ibadah, right? Like ibadah. I believe that helps us immensely towards making yourself more devout. Like a whole load of, you know, wholesome activities, you know, like archery is one very good thing. If we're talking about sports, you know, archery or, you know, etc. And outside of that, you know, having interests that are outside of that. You know, this is where I feel that Muslims just we need to broaden our perspectives, you know, in that sense, and bring that into a Islamic way of living, you know, and yeah. So I think that is all conducive and all assists towards then reading the Book of Allah and having presence with the Book of Allah. Because if you just, otherwise you're just another fragment, you know, you're just fragmenting further. And it's interesting because Quran, its very meaning is al-jama', is to bring together. Yeah, that's why they would say qara'tu al-ma'. It means jama'a al-ma'. They brought water together. That's one of its mushtaq min qura. And if you know from the Quran, that's the qura, right? The fuqaha differed on this. Yeah, is it tuhur or is it the menses? Yeah, because it's talking about tajammad ad-dam. The blood gathers in the raham. You understand? That's why it's called qura. The idea of the, so Quran is a thing of bringing together, and that's what it brings you together in every sense. You understand? It doesn't leave you, you know, like you're over here, you're scattered, you know, compartmentalized, secularized. Yeah, it doesn't do that. It brings you whole, and brings you together in physical, spiritual, mental, and everything around you. You know, it's unicity of the oneness of Allah. It connects back to the oneness of Allah. You know, right? These are very, and you know, even with the names that we have, you know, the Quran has many names, you know, Al-Kitab, Al-Furqan, you know, and then you have within that, you have the term Surah, you know, Surah, yeah. Surah is interesting, because Surah means literally a foundation, a building, you know, some say fence, you understand, huh? It also means building, and that's quite brilliant, because if you take each Surah, forms different parts of a great, beautiful structure, do you see what I mean, to be explored, right? And even and the ayah, then each one of these is an ayah. Each one's an ayah is a sign. Ayah is a sign. And that's exactly, signs indicate to that which is greater, and that is exactly why the kalam of Allah is tremendous, because it points. Speech is what points. Speech points. You understand? And what that way to understand what I'm trying to say there is, whatever I say, it's pointing to meaning that you have, right? So I often use that example. If I say the word chair, right, it's pointed to the object as chair. That expression itself is not literally chair. Do you understand? That's why speech points. And that's why the book of Allah is so amazing, because it mirrors perfectly and it points to the divine attribute of Allah. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, no other book has ever been preserved to this, and we know that, even though all other scriptures were set out to be revealed in Ramadan, according to one tradition, right? They said that the Injil was revealed on the 13th of Ramadan, started its revelation on the 13th. The Torah was the 6th, the Suhuf was the 1st, and the Quran was on the 26th. This is in one hadith. Musnad of Ahmad, right? So the point, that's why, Alhamdulillah alladhi anzala al-Quran, or Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. That's why they started there, and then there's many interpretations to that. What does it mean? Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr. Is it talking about the Quran's transition from the Lawh al-Mahfuz in its entirety to the lower heaven, and then it was taken from there, intermittently, tanjiman, through the years, and delivered to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these are. These are things that I think that's very important. I mean, you're gonna, the thing of having a greater lifestyle as well that mirrors this I think is very, very important. Our choices of all sorts of things, from eating the right things and etc. Like I've already said. So I can repeat myself. But further, yes, Tawfiq.
You mentioned probably a few weeks ago about someone's feeling depressed. They should look at what they're eating, specifically. I think you said carbohydrates.
Yes. Carbs they can be very dulling too, especially carbs, because the thing is sugars, essentially sugars, because what sugars do, they give you artificial highs, okay, and all chronic diseases have literally come down to inflammation. So carbohydrates turns into sugar basically. So you've got sugar on top of sugar. Do you understand what I mean? And you're sending things through a vicious cycle, because your insulin kicks in to bring your body weight down, to bring your sugar levels to normal. It goes below the normal, then it spikes. So then you take another shot to bring it back up, and it goes right over the top. Then you end up a vicious circle, right? And that is how a lot of modern food is designed. Dr. Pepper was the guy who was behind Dr. Pepper. He was the one who invented the what was known as the peak. He basically patented what was known as the highest euphoric high you can get from sugar for the longest period, what percentage that needs to be, right? So he patented that. That's why everyone used it after everything, right? He was the guy who painted it, the guy behind Dr. Pepper, right? He patented the percentage of how you get the most euphoric high from artificial sugar, right? That basically the most sustained high that then you're going to drop from, and then you're going to have to take another shot. You see what I mean, right? So this is the whole thing, and this is why depression and things like that, I think, can be, and there's so many factors, lifestyle, environment, upbringing, etc. That all, but diet is definitely a big thing,
So from a practical perspective, if you're hungry, then you want to eat that rice, bread, and that's going to fill you up. So what's the alternative?
Yeah, you can have. You can have it in proportionality. Small things. I mean, if you're going to have wheat, good wheats, natural wheats, like there's wheats like the Khorasani wheat, which is more for Indo-Pak. This can be probably better, and incorn for incorn wheat. This can be better because the chromosomes of this wheat is not as complicated as, say, modern wheat. Because through Industrial Revolution they had to resell the wheat, etc. So the wheat stalks were bigger because they fit the factories better. And so they basically screwed everything up. The chromosome of the wheat became a lot more intense, right? And this is now we've had over 150 years of this stuff. So, but this is where there's things like spelt when we go. But wheat, it's not saying don't do, you should have some wheat, of course. But this is why, when you hear, the staple diet of people was bread, yeah, but what type of bread? That's the point. Don't just fly that off the handle. Everyone ate bread. That's from, everyone from the time of Jesus. Everyone's eating bread. But yeah, we know. But what type of bread were they eating? Not this type of bread. Not this stuff that's got L-cysteine in it. That's like a byproduct of hair preservation. Wraps. Be careful. And they can put suitable for vegetarians. Yes. And you look at the name, you don't even think of L-cysteine. What the hell's L-cysteine? Oh, whatever. I don't understand it. Surely ignorance is bliss. Alas. It's got the V sign and it's green. I can do that. That's all right. Huh? This is why you have to, they get so much natural flavouring. What can they swing under natural flavouring will amaze you. Huh? Like, especially in ice creams. Natural flavouring can refer to beaver's butt gland. Yeah, and they're not. Oh, we left the EU now. Oh, right. Maybe there may be some good in this, because that's all the standards are. Oh, it's EU regulated. It's all right. Oh, we left the EU. Okay. Maybe it's not that bad, Brexit. All this turbulence. This is it. You see? You know what it is? The turbulence of this age, is so. This is one thing we've got to be very careful about, And I think that's why we need to worry about this. And I don't worry is the wrong word, but we've got to stop keeping our heads buried under the sand. That's what I mean. Things are very, very concerning. And we shouldn't kid ourselves. We shouldn't kid ourselves. Things are very concerning. This whole thing, what it means. This is the thing. It's the uncertainty. You see what happens when there's uncertainty in these countries, in any country. Once you put uncertainty, right? What do they resort to? They resort to very much an impulsive state of defense. Right? And inshallah, Allah bring khair. We always hope for khair. But we should be wakeful as well, that be aware of our times, things changing like this are, we shouldn't just ignore them and just think we ignore them in one extent, don't get me wrong, we should ignore them in one extent, but at the same time, we should be more concerted in what we need to be doing. And to be clear, and just to make this more simple, if to get on a program to do what we should be doing, that is the best form of countering what is going on. That is the point, and it's without sounding overly simple about this, but really to revive the prophetic way of being, that is the response. And I don't mean to sound so blasé about that, but when you really understand what that represents, but see, that's what comes back to understanding. That's what comes back to understanding. Having an understanding of that, how that should be done, in what way it should be done. It is the greatest response we can give, and it's the most hopeful response. At a time where people are, they're becoming harder and harder to find hope, right? But I find it quite interesting. It's greed, Greed's ajib. The people some of the highest votes to leave EU were places that had received some of the highest funding from EU. Ironic, isn't it? Ajib, huh? That's just like, huh? That's a sign. That is a sign of where insan is. That's where humanity is gone. The sense of deservedness is unbelievable, and that is what you're going to open up. That's what happens when you don't have something to regulate the nafs. Your deservedness makes you totally blind to blessing. You just don't see it. It's unbelievable. It's like, these are places that had received arguably some of the most funding from the EU, and they voted out to regenerate their places. That is a massive alama of our condition as humanity, of where we are. It's massive, because you can't behave like that and expect there's not going to be an undoing of things in the long term as well. Do you see what I mean? That's why knowing blessings and acknowledging them is not just something central to our deen, it's central to humanity. If humanity starts losing that as a point of focus, it loses its humanity. It will lose humanity because greed will then become so personally personified, right? That it really won't matter. What doesn't matter? It's ironic. It's ironic in the sense of wanting to take something back. You know what I mean? There's a real irony in the whole thing. But that is the nature of nafs. You know, that is the nature of nafs. The nafs does that, right? But yeah, inshallah. Any other questions? This is going to be, I don't know, we've got a few days left and then Monday, that's it. Monday could be the last one. So we should try and hope you've all done, at least try to do a khatam of Quran. If not, then try to do more than that. If you've done a khatam, then mashallah, but even more than that is much better, something, I didn't mean to I don't, sometimes using those examples, people just think, oh man, this is our rule. That's a different standard, People like that before were just, it's different, but really, when you read about it, you're like, wow, but you read about wow in the sense of, we should feel encouraged by this. This is my point. Not deflated. Bro, no, you should feel encouraged, say, oh, mashallah. And remember, I honestly believe, now this is an asar, Allah alim, the hadith of that the hour will not stand until for a believer, it will be in the end of time, it will be the one holding on to his iman. Qaqabidun ala jamar, right? Will be one holding on to a hot coal in his palm. You understand? Towards the end of time, right? A hot coal. And that, when the Prophet strikes a similitude or a metaphor, it's very important, very important. You conceptualize this. It is very, very important. It's not simple. His words are not just, when he gives a metaphor, and his metaphors are epic. It's very interesting because if you familiarize yourself well with the Book of Allah, if you're a Hafiz of Quran, they are so different. Hadith and Quran are so different, yet they are epic in the meanings they can expound. They are so different, but yet they're epic in meaning. And you think about this, what the Prophet said about that, like holding on to a hot coal, right? You imagine that. You imagine taking a hot coal, fresh off the barbecue, you pick it up and you put it in your hand. You're gonna what? Either you're just gonna you're gonna script, or you're gonna try and what? You're gonna try and juggle it, aren't you? Right? You understand? You're gonna try and stop it from. You understand? You're taking from one hand to another, and I think that is so powerful. You know why? Because I think even though it's talking about that on an individual level, I think it says so much about needing to be a collective. Because if you've got enough palms around, you can just chuck it around. Do you see what I mean? So no one gets burned. Do you understand? But if you're trying to just hold it yourself, you're going to get your hand burned right through. But if there's enough hands, you can just keep tossing it, and you help each other. And that way you can always stay strong. Yeah, that's something I was just thinking. I think it's subhanAllah, ajib. Rather than it being, this is why the prophetic hadith, and there's much prophetic, what the Prophet said to Hudayfa, he said, stick to the jama'ah. Get to a group of people. What did he? This is towards the end of time. So this is why you can't isolate. You've got to read things. Find a collective where you can do things together, some way you can hopefully help. Right? And the worst thing is now we've got to understand, some people are at that point where they feel they're literally trying to keep that coal, right? And some of them just want to chuck that coal right out. And some wasn't even helping them throw that coal. They're like, don't worry, where do you want to lose it? I'll throw it even further for you if you want. Right? This is like crazy. Do you get what I mean? There's no understanding. That hadith is epic. It really demonstrates the difficulty of where Muslims are and how we've got to understand that. And we're all doing it in our own way. We're all trying to wrestle with that. Some of us are more resilient than others, but some of us are literally they're tired, man. They're just like, I can't move my hand. This is hard. All right? It's amazing hadith. Amazing hadith. So I think, inshallah, what I mean by that as well is that we're in this time where we can take, doing a little can mean a hell of a lot. I don't mean that, it can mean, and I believe that because, we're in a very testing time. There's no doubt about it. And, in that there's great encouragement as well because your rewards are equivalent to what you're tested in. So being in a time like this, yes, it's very difficult, but also the opportunity is massive. You do something, it's massive. And that's the counter. That is the counterbalance. That's the counterbalance. Even though you're, Allah's so Kareem. He's so Kareem. Right? Inshallah khair. I'm going to request that everyone also makes dua for brother Tahqib, who's Ustad Tahqib. We know him, I mentioned him earlier. His father, they were on Umrah, and his father's taken ill quite seriously. In fact, very seriously. He's unconscious, and they're in Mecca, and he's in a hospital. So he's actually been unconscious for a few days. I mean, there's things like that. Please make prayers for his dad and for him and their family. They're all there. You can only imagine it must be very difficult for them. Yeah, I mean, subhanAllah, you know. I mean, I've spoken to him, and I've been liaising with him via text and things, and he said to me, he goes, you know what? He goes, this is just unbelievable. He goes, like, you know, it's like a surreal situation, you know. The father's where then he goes, I'm in the haram, I'm looking at the Kaaba, and there's Quran, you know, because it's just. I said, you're in a massive test. It's a big test. I said, but then equally, I said, you're in the epicenter of where tests are removed. You know, I said, so we must make dua for him and his family, and especially for his father. His father, honestly, his father is an amazing man. I've known that family for over 12 years, right? And I know him very personally. He's like my brother, and his father, I hold him almost like a second father. And his father, honestly, I tell you, it's both his parents. In fact, both his parents are the most phenomenal people I've ever met at that age. You know, his father's 73, right? Remarkable individuals. You know, regular. I mean, I've been going to Crawley and doing classes there for 12 years. Him and his mum and dad, him and his wife they're regular in the classes for 12 years. Regular, every Thursday they'll be in the class. Even if it's like 3 or 4, they will be in that class. That's just one aspect of the man. He finishes a Quran every week, right? His work for the local mosque is phenomenal. I mean, he's one of those men that he's you know, salih, righteousness is amazing, and he's just Allahu Akbar, you know, just really hope that Allah inshallah gives him shifa and, you know, brings him forward. You know.
So, personally, one of my grandparents is very ill, but so to what extent how do we react to this? To what extent should we be sad for them if they live like a good life and that old? Like it's sort of, is it a natural part of life that they're going to pass on? Do we pray for them? Like what?
Well, the dua is always that Allah inshallah do what's best for them in this world and in the hereafter. For them as in his father, that's the first thing. What's best for him in this world and the hereafter, and then we make dua that Allah obviously gives him, brings him back and gives him good health in our expectations of those that would want that, you know. But we also resign to the fact of knowing that Allah knows best, and He most certainly does, you know. But we always make dua for khair, you know. We always make dua for khair, you know, and inshallah Allah do what's you know, best for them all, you know. Inshallah Allah bring him, give him back his, you know, regain consciousness. You know, it's quite, it's actually pretty serious, you know. But yeah, of course you feel sad. I mean, I'm sad. I'm very sad. You know, I am very, very sad. But you know, at the end of the day, you know, this is what Allah's Allah. This is why even when He said to me, He goes, you know what? He goes, we're nothing. He said this on the text. He goes, we're nothing. It just lets you know that Allah is Allah. You can't do nothing. You know that you are absolutely helpless. I mean, that sense of helplessness, yeah, is a massive test of your iman in Allah. That's not an easy thing, yeah. But it's when subhanallah, when you have that certainty, you know what? He is the one that's in charge. You can't. You have to. You know, it's a test. That's why we would say it's a test. It's a test. It's a lesson of that. And you know, Allah inshallah make it easy for them and make it easy for us. You know, inshallah. Yeah, so please remember them in your prayers, yeah, and us, and remember each other obviously in these ayyam. Barakallahu feekum, jazakumullah khair. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Jazallahu anna sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al mursalin. اللهم تقبل منا واغفر لنا سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم آمين جزاكم الله خيرا بارك الله
Sneak a look at the cover of the book, but then
Oh, this book is actually, it's a tafsir of Fatiha by Ibn Ajiba. But that, what I pulled out there was notes from something else which I ended up writing in here. That's what's happened.